Hello out there. Can you hear me? Let me know. Let me know in the comments. Greta will be here shortly. She is, it's raining outside my studio where we record. And hopefully she didn't get washed away by the rain. There we go.
Sorry.
Here she is.
I had to swim.
She had to swim, she says. So, all right.
Hi, guys.
Got to say it into the microphone.
Hi, guys.
Oh, loud and clear. I read you at least. Loud and clear. Hey, can I get a loud and clear there in the comments just to make sure before we dive in that y'all hear us all right? I still got to figure out how to get better at the whole live streaming technical aspect. All good. Micah L says all good. Just finished listening to Chapter 3 breakdown. Right on. Loud and clear from John Rice. Greta is just making destroying all the eardrums.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, man. Look at that hair from all the rain.
Rain, humidity, not my friend.
We use a doing the YouTube thing. We don't have the same magical filters that make us look all spiffy on
I thought we were gonna have those.
So
I didn't really work that hard.
Now you know what we really look like.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so what's up, everybody?
Hey, guys.
So Greta, remember, this is you're the chat person, so you got to be like giving all this, because I'm trying to do all this stuff over here, right? Keeping all the stuff we're going to talk about going, and you're like the chat person.
I didn't know that was my job, but now I do, so I'll do it.
Well, you said that last time that you wanted to do that.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Okay. See? Thanks for reminding me.
There you go.
All right. Well, welcome. This is awesome.
Yeah.
We got Micah and Jonathan Rice and John Richards and Ty and Red Hawk. Awesome.
Right on.
Very cool.
Red Hawk, can you bring me some popcorn too? I would love some. I would love some. All right. So, oh man, there is so much going on right now in the world of Tolkiendom. I don't even know where to start, you guys. I put together a lot of notes. I don't see there's any way we can possibly get to it all tonight. But I really want to focus on on a little Q&A from you guys too, as far as what you want to talk about. So I mean, obviously the Rings of Power has happened since our last live stream. I think last live stream, the Rings of Power had they had dropped that teaser, the first teaser with the making the forging of the ring, right? The cool special effects there. And now we've got a lot more information that we're working with. Still not a full picture of what we're going to see, but like it's starting to come more into focus, and there's a lot more for us to talk about, and a lot more for people to gripe about at this point too. So yeah, we're gonna we'll talk about all the controversies there. So hey, quick shout out. So we got our very first ever super chat from Ty Miller right there. Thank you.
Oh,
Ty.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
I was wondering what that was.
Yeah, we're monetized now on the YouTube side of things. So tips accepted, right? In the form of super chats if you want to go there. So we're glad everybody's here, and we love the tips. So Ty, thanks for being our very first super chat. That's awesome.
That is very
really
awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ty.
All right. So yeah, I mean, I'm still processing it all. It's been a really weird last, I think since the teaser dropped for me, it's been frankly a little bit trying for me. There's just a lot of chatter going on out there about all the things. And, for those of slow clap for Ty, that's right. For those of y'all who have been out there, and with us for a while, like we operate a little bit more like Ents, like the elves on this podcast, where we want to take our time, think deeply about things, and then rather than having kind of that rash reaction. And quite frankly, like, what I feared, I feel like it seems to be coming to fruition, right? In terms of the Rings of Power coming. And it's not so much about the content, because I think that's going to be a lot of interesting debate. which I really look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a lot of, I think there's just a lot going on as far as, gosh, what am I trying to say here? I think there's what I feared was that there was people were gonna make Middle Earth territory for a culture war, right? Like,
Mm.
for kind of this
Yeah.
this clash between different ideologies, and I'm not about that, right? To me, Middle Earth is a place of escape, and is this thing where Tolkien takes all of us so that we can escape the clashes, the warring factions of the world for a moment, and think more deeply about what really matters, right? Um, and I do think there is a time for defending things. I do think there's, all of that's true. But man, I feel like all of the people, all of the grifters are descending upon Middle Earth. Like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
now there's going to be this really big TV show, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to lay out all my ideologies. But anyway, I don't want to dwell on that too much. That's kind of where my headspace has been, and I'm trying to keep from getting into all of that, and so we can all think deeply about,
Mm-hmm.
about what's going on with this show, and honestly just have, have some good times discussing it, and maybe have our perspectives changed in some ways. um you know be open to having our perspectives changed, and thinking, like, I guess the big question again for me is just, what does Tolkien think, right? Because
Yeah.
that's why I got into this in the first place. That's why I've been doing this podcast for 7 years.
Many years.
So I think
Yeah.
you just made a surprise, and I
I
think I know why.
did.
So I wanted to give a chance to
Yeah.
say something.
Our long lost super fan Josh has
Yeah.
returned. Welcome, Josh.
Super fan Josh Sosa.
One of our original super fans.
I think the very
Awesome.
first super fan for us.
Was he
So,
the very
yeah,
first?
Yeah.
That's awesome. Welcome.
It's
Welcome,
great.
Josh.
It's great to see your name there, Josh. It
I
really is.
know. And I love that Jonathan Rice recognized him as super fan Josh.
That's right.
He's famous. That's awesome. Welcome. Yeah, a lot of good stuff in the chat right now. Micah says, honestly, for me, I just think there is so much that people haven't read or studied. So when there are people who thought it was going to be one show and show one section of the Legendarium, and they seem to be doing different things, that seems to be the biggest issue I see. Yeah, no, I agree. People that haven't spent the time, like, actually reading Tolkien's own thoughts on his creation,
Yeah.
and then want to have their 2 cents paid attention to. Yeah, I agree. That's going to be a big problem.
Well, and the thing that bugs me is when it's people who already have large megaphones and other capacities, right? They already have relatively large platforms and other capacities, and all of a sudden it's like Middle Earth is just another thing for them, and they want to descend upon it and be like, blah blah blah, this is what I'm seeing. I've seen 30 seconds of a teaser, and I'm going to tell you exactly how Amazon is ruining this, and and it's just like,
yeah,
you don't care about Tolkien. Like, you don't really care. Like, you don't. Like, you're just you care about the grift, right?
Yeah.
You care about the coming in. So anyway, I'm going to stop with that, you guys, because I don't want this to be a negative thing. We're here to have fun together, and we got a lot to talk about. So let's dive in. Let's dive into it.
Yeah, I do want to. Jonathan he asked, I wonder what Tolkien's views on toxic fandom were or would be today. That's kind of interesting. Maybe we define toxic fandom first. I mean, is that?
Well, I mean,
it's a new phrase to me.
I'm sure. I've seen it. Yeah, it's one that I think is going around a lot right now, within fandom. And I think it's the idea that, I think probably different people would define that term in different ways. I think Tolkien probably had his own take on it, because I think in his time, I'm sure there were certain fans who he felt were toxic in the sense of, like, wanting to get way up into his business about things, and instead of, like, corresponding and asking nice questions. I don't know. I've never heard that he actually had any, like, stalkers or anything.
I was wondering if you were referring to stalkers.
I don't think that's what John is. I think in this context, what we're talking about with toxic fandom is, I would say it's people who, in some cases, I think it's people who aren't even, like, really. They maybe not, like, kind of Tolkien fans, in the sense of, like, it's another thing of, like, geek culture or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with people, like, Tolkien not being their main thing, and just like, coming in, like everybody's got their main jams, right? But it's people, I think, who like immediately they see controversy and they just want to come in and start arguing about everything instead of being like, do you really understand Tolkien as well as you think you do? Right. Because I'll be quite honest, I've been doing this podcast for 7 years, and I just feel like I am constantly surprised as I research different things about what Tolkien might have thought, and that there was a lot more room, there's a lot more room for interpretation in certain things than, I think people give credit for. So, I think toxic fandom to me is just people who want to argue about things instead of like having like good debate and like, honest debate. They just want to be like, you think this and therefore you're bad, or Amazon's doing this and I can read the minds of the writers. I've got my disagreements with things I've already seen. My main disagreement right now is honestly one that most people don't seem to care too much about, or at least kind of the big discussions are not about, but it's more along the lines of like, I just really wish they weren't flattening 3,000 years of history.
Yeah. I think Jonathan kind of, mentioned certain groups of fans that gatekeep and exclude other fans and belittling others. So the possessive fandom, I think, is what Micah called it. So that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, I think we're all probably trying to sort this out. And I think the biggest thing is that we all need to be patient for one another. I have no problem with people arguing, maybe even getting a little passionate especially when they know what they're talking about. Like when it's clear they know it, or they've taken the time to actually do the research.
Yeah.
There was a thing, Greta, that I don't think you were privy to. And I think this is a good example. I made a video a couple weeks ago in response to an article on, there was an article somebody wrote that was basically like, Lord of the Rings is not Christian, right? And you read this article and you're like, well, okay, I don't think it's Christian in the sense of being like explicitly Christian, right?
Yeah.
But you read this article and you're just like, this guy has a big megaphone, but he does not know what he's talking about. He's grifting, right? He's grifting to a specific audience, and it was like, I kind of pity you, like how poorly informed you are, but you think you're smart, right? I have no problem with having a discussion with somebody who's really well informed and, maybe is saying something that I disagree with, because you know what, maybe my mind's going to be changed. Maybe I have an opportunity to change their mind and we can have a profitable discussion along the way. Because maybe there's some things both of us aren't seeing. Right. But when somebody is just taking a stance and it's like, and they're just basically trying to divide fandom for the sake of dividing and like kind of scoring points with a particular crowd. To me, that's a lot of what we're seeing out there. So, but let's dive into just some of the stuff. Some of the details, and I want to offer some thoughts and maybe see what you guys have to say.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, you have a Ty is in agreement with you. He thinks the timeline is the biggest issue as well.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's like the thing that's clearest.
Yeah.
So let me go through. So there's 3 things that jump out to me. All right, 3 things that I've seen so far from Rings of Power that were the main things for me that I'm like, I'm not sure what I think about that, right? Or I had a strong reaction to it. The first thing was the timeline, which, maybe we'll come back to that. I do actually want to I'm hoping to do a video here soon, just discussing the timeline and the problems, why I'm so disappointed by that. I get their rationale, but I think it's a bad one. And I think quite honestly, it's the most egregious violation of what Tolkien actually thought that I've seen so far. My big thing with that, I'll just lay that out real quick. What I think about that so far is 3,000 years is literally the period. Like, think about how long ago David would have been the king of Israel, right? Like literally like roughly 1000 BC to now. That's 3,000 years. That is a long, long time. The world has changed and changed and changed in innumerable ways in that period of time. You just think about all the people who have lived and died in that period of time. And one of the key themes of Middle Earth, as we've seen with the Silmarillion, because we're going through the Silmarillion early on again, is the idea that the elves are immortal, right? The elves are immortal and men are mortal. So there's this juxtaposition between the two groups. A person like Galadriel has this way different perspective on history, on everything than men would have, than men who are contemporaries with her in any given period of time, right? like that is a key theme that we see Tolkien drawing out from the very beginning in the Legendarium of Middle Earth. And but their excuse for not doing that was, well, we can't just be killing off like all of our human characters, our non-elf characters, like every season, right? But I'm like,
you don't have to.
You don't have to. You could fix the period of time that you're telling the story into, and then you could do flashbacks, right, to other periods of time.
And also, elves are basically immortal, right?
Well, but what I'm saying is the men, what they were saying is that there's men, right? There's humans, right? Non-mortal, like non-immortals, mortal men who, if they did like a 3,000 year sweep of history, would die off every season.
Yeah,
right?
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
So you'd be like, maybe you do Galadriel and Elros, right? The first king of Numenor in the first season, right? And then Elros is no longer around after about 500 into the Second Age, right? So, and then you're going all the way to 3,000 with this thing, 3,000 years roughly, speaking of round numbers. But no more Elros at that point. But to me, that's a failure of like imagination and a failure of narrative art, right? Of thinking about what was the story Tolkien was actually telling.
Yeah.
And is it really fair of us to flatten this? So, and honestly, there's the greater question to me of the aesthetic of it, right? One of the things that I love about Middle Earth, one of the things that has drawn me to it from the very beginning, is the idea of this vast history, right? That this in the Lord of the Rings, there's like 6,000 years of history between the Lord of the Rings and the stories of the late First Age, right? And that is just mind expanding, soul expanding in a way that like modernity has kind of robbed us of, right? How little connection do we have as modern people to just tradition, to like things of the past? And you get a taste of those, and you think about like how shallow our lives can be sometimes in this modern age, and you're like, man, like that like sense of tradition, that sense of being connected to something that happened a long time ago. How valuable is that, right? As Catholics, like we get we do have some kind of a taste of that, because like tradition is such a big part of of what we are. And like just today is like the feast of Saint Polycarp, right? And he was like one of the very first martyrs of the church, right? So like literally today, like as I'm doing my daily prayers, it's like I'm thinking about this guy Polycarp, right, who lived ages ago, right? I mean, he lived, do the comparison, right? He basically lived like, if this is 3,000 in the Second Age, then he lived in 1,000 in the Second Age, right? So it's that flattening, and you see this with like geography, the flattening of like in the modern age, like journeys don't mean the same things to us, because we're like, well, I can go from here to the farthest place away from me in the world in less than 24 hours, right? I can fly across an ocean and it ain't no thing, right? And for people in the past, it's like that would have been unthinkable, right? Like to a person in Europe a couple of centuries ago, like a journey to India was like a once in a lifetime. Like you may go there, and if you go there, you might never come back, right?
Yeah.
There's a good chance you might, because it might just be too costly, right?
It's kind of like us going to Mars.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of how it used to be back then. And Red Hawk made an excellent point here. He says, if you destroy history, what is the present? And
boom.
That's it right there, right? I mean, you have no context then at that point, So it's an issue.
Yeah, for sure. And I just think like I think the flattening of history of a historical epic like that would have been offensive to Tolkien. Like I just feel like in the time I've spent with him, I can't tell you for sure. I'm not the authority of being like able to read his mind from beyond the grave, but I just get the sense of all the time I spent with him that like he made this 3,000 years for a reason.
Yeah.
So I feel like you can do better as a storyteller when you're adapting his works.
And they had other options. Like that's the thing, like they could have done a frame narrative, or they could have done flashbacks, and I think the general consensus right here is that, I mean, we're all in agreement, that this is probably not going to be good, but we're all going to watch it because it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, we're all gonna watch it for sure.
Yeah.
It's disappointing, and
Yeah.
it's something, and it's the most disappointing thing to me. All right, let's hit
Mhm.
the other topic. So the other two big things, I think. Well, let's go with Galadriel first. I think we talked a lot about Galadriel so far, and what we've seen of her depiction so far. I have to say that at first I was not. I was like, really, Galadriel is kind of like this like warrior, and it has nothing to do with like. I mean, Tolkien obviously had Eowyn like depicted her as like a strong female warrior style character, right?
Mhm.
So that was not the issue. It's just like, does Tolkien ever depict her that way, right? Do we have any indication that Tolkien actually thought? Remember, that's the thing for me. What would Tolkien think, right? And at first, my position was I don't think so. But as I did some more reading, I was like, you know what? I can see that, right? I actually think there's a case to be made here. I think, and in fact, I think later in life, like in some of his last Middle Earth writings, Tolkien indicated that he was at least very open to that depiction of Galadriel.
Mhm.
If you want to see more references for this, I recommend Unfinished Tales, the chapter on Galadriel and Celeborn. So
Mm.
there's some citations in there that at least support the idea that Tolkien was open to that
Mhm.
depiction of her. He may have still been kind of wrestling with it. I think Galadriel was like, for him, like developed greatly over the course of his life. But the fact that he was still thinking about it so much towards the end of his life is really interesting to me.
Yeah, no, I
So,
totally agree. JDR says Galadriel is like Joan of Arc. I
that's
like
good.
that. I
That's
like that
good.
a lot. Um, and Ty said, which to be fair, oh wait, no, sorry, it was Jonathan R. He says, I definitely pictured her this way during the war with Morgoth.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, how could you not picture her that way when she's at war,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Well, and it's really interesting. I think one of the things, and I'm gonna try and I'm not gonna try and reference these things from the text, like directly from the text, but some of the things I remember from reading Galadriel and Celeborn the other night. Um, First of all, like she was she was basically on the same level athletically as the male elves, right? Like she was able to hold her own in athletic competition with the male elves, right?
mhm, mhm,
And uh and furthermore, she was pretty big. Like she wasn't like there wasn't like this difference in size, right, between the
mhm,
males and the female elves, right?
right, yeah.
Um she was actually pretty close to the same size as like your average male elf.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
so I think I've come around on that idea, right?
yeah.
And that I'm at least open to it. Some people don't want to come around to that, and
One of my favorite characters in Lord of the Rings is Eowyn.
yeah,
So I mean, give me an Eowyn like Galadriel. Like I'm all about that. John R. Quotes letter 320. He says, but actually Galadriel was a penitent in her youth, a leader in the rebellion against the Valar.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so let's see. Let's carry. So he says, but if they are not going to really set that stage, that backstory will be lost or ignored.
Hmm.
At the end of the first stage, she proudly refused forgiveness or permission to return. Yeah, it's interesting because
Hmm.
I feel like Tolkien he went back and forth with who Galadriel was on that very question, right? Like on I definitely know that quote, but I feel like there's other places, and again, I don't have these things right in front of me, but there's other places where he seems to be like, but maybe she wasn't so much a follower in the rebellion as she. I think there's places where he basically says like she went to, because she hung with the Teleri a lot. She was like, I think she wanted to go back to Middle Earth. Like she liked the journeying. She was a
Mhm.
journeyer and all those kinds of things. She
Mhm.
wanted to go and explore, I think, the wide open lands of Middle Earth. And I think there was this thing where she undertook a journey back to Middle Earth apart from Feanor and his crowd, but kind of got caught up in all of it, and then later on was unwilling to like come back when they summoned them back.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
she's a complex character, and I
Yeah,
think
for sure.
at the very least, and so my thing is with Tolkien, if it's clear that Tolkien didn't finally land in one place or another, right? Then I'm like,
Fair
sure,
game. Fair game.
it
Yeah.
definitely is supported by plenty of the things that he said.
Yeah. It's
So,
not going to be outwardly contrary to either view.
well, and we'll see how it develops.
Well, we will. We will. Ty says she was a CrossFit beast more than pageant queen.
There you go.
Amen. I like that.
Right
That's
on.
awesome.
Right
That's
on.
really great.
I will say
Yeah.
though, you guys, Luthien is more of that like, I don't know what the right term is, but like in terms of female characters, she has a different kind of power. But what's cool about her is that like and I talk about this in Tolkien's Overture, right? I have a whole chapter about her and the power of music is seen through her.
Mhm.
She's a warrior in her own way, and I think one of the lessons,
Mhm.
like, of the story of Beren and Luthien, like, everybody thinks that Beren is the hero of that story, and I'm like
Mm-mm.
Luthien, like, saves his arse
He
multiple
does.
times,
They
right?
never would have made it out alive
And he
without
keeps on getting
Luthien.
himself into trouble, right?
I
He keeps on doing
know. I
stupid
mean,
things
she
and getting
defeated
himself into trouble.
that dog. I mean, she's the reason
Yeah.
that they even accomplished their quest. John quoted he pulled a couple other quotes here from letter 320. He said Galadriel was unstained. She had committed no evil deeds. She was an enemy of Feanor. Her reasons for desiring to go to Middle Earth were legitimate, and she would have been permitted to depart, but for the misfortune that before she set out yeah.
But for the misfortune that
Sorry.
before she set out, the revolt of Feanor broke out, and she became involved in the desperate measures of Manwë and the ban on all immigration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, fair game. I mean, I would love to see a warrior like Galadriel.
To me, Galadriel may be like the perfect blend of Éowyn and Luthien, right? She's like, if you took those two characters and kind of like,
right, because Éowyn wasn't an elf,
blended them,
right? Yeah. So, whereas Galadriel would be like, yeah, no, I agree. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah,
yeah, that's true.
All right. Well, the other thing on the other big topic, I think that has maybe been the most controversial is the whole question of elves, dwarves, and race. And and man, I just wish people would like chill out and have and just before they say anything would strive to have a productive conversation. You got people on one end of things, and I'm going to be very vague about certain things. I don't want to politicize any of it.
No, I hate politics. Don't do that.
But you have people on one end of things who are like, convinced that, Amazon is introducing things for the sake of purely for the sake of political correctness into the Legendarium that aren't actually there, and that in fact explicitly violate the Legendarium. And then I feel like you have people on another extreme who say if you dare question the fact that there is a black elf, or if you dare question the fact that there's a black dwarf, then you are by definition a racist. And I just think those two extremes, like, man, that's just trouble, right? That's like, slow down, everybody, slow down. Do everything you can to have a productive conversation. I'll be honest. I have not. My thoughts on this are complex, and it's because race is a complex topic. I think I've read some really interesting things from people I really respect in the last couple of days, not that aren't necessarily publicly available, that I think are really good insights on this question. And they were surprising too. And it's helped me to come around. I will say, like, my thing is like, what would Tolkien think, right? Has nothing to do, like, honestly,
this is a new thing. WWTT.
What would Tolkien think? That's right.
Yeah, that's our thing.
Yeah. WWTT. That's right. So, I'm kind of stumbling over everything I want to say, but like,
was he ever explicit? Like,
okay, the only thing I've been able to find about elves is that the Noldor, I believe it's the Noldor. No, the sons of, I think, Fenway specifically, were fair-skinned and blonde-haired. Now, I'm here to say, you guys, like, what else is there that tells us from Tolkien's own words, right? The other thing that I hear the other argument that I hear people say, which to me is a secondary level argument, because it's not, the first thing is explicit about a specific group of elves. The second thing I see is people saying, well, it's, the whole mythology is kind of based on this Northern European sort of thing. It's supposed to be a mythology that has roots in Northern European history and all this kind of thing. And to me, that is a way more complex question than any of this. And I think we are learning things from an anthropological perspective, from a historical perspective all the time about like who lived where, about where people came from, about what people even looked like. And I think those things get really surprising sometimes, right?
Yeah.
I do know for a fact that Tolkien despised the whole like Nordic, you know, or what is the right term? The way that
Norsemen.
basically the way the Nazis co-opted Norse mythology is this kind of like Aryan race race thing. And I'm not saying people are advocating for that. Not saying people are advocating for that in the realm of Tolkiendom. I'm just saying that that's clear that Tolkien did not like that. And I feel like Tolkien had very complex thoughts. I'm like, I don't know of anything that says you couldn't have black elves. I don't know anything that says you couldn't have elves that look particularly Asian, right? I don't know of anything that says you couldn't have elves that look particularly like any race of any group of people, like any ethnic group. I the only thing I would say is that it sounds like the people who are descendants of Fenway specifically, if I got that quote right, make sure check me on that quote, everybody. It's from the appendices of Lord of the Rings, but the only thing I know is that those people, that particular group of people, fair-skinned and blue-eyed, I think, or not blue-eyed, blonde-haired, right? That is the only thing I know about. So, you know, please double check me on that.
John R. says Middle Earth corresponds spiritually to Nordic Europe. Not Nordic, please. A word I personally dislike. That was from Tolkien himself.
Yeah. So corresponds spiritually, right?
To Nordic Europe.
To Nordic Europe.
Yeah.
And so that's not in dispute on the level of like, you know, we know that Tolkien made that connection. The question is, does he say anything about how certain people looked? I've heard people, I feel like people make an argument on one side that says, well, there can't be black elves because we all know that the elves came, this is a Northern European mythology and the elves all came from there, right? And it's like, but if the elves, like the elves, first of all, came from like way far in the east, right? They came from the region of Quiviana, which we know was like super far in the east, right? It's so far in the east that it's really off the map that I have behind me, right? Which is unfortunately kind of reversed as you guys see it. We're mirror image, yeah. Anyway, they came from way far in the east, and I'm like, why couldn't you have certain groups of elves that are white, certain groups of elves that are black, certain groups of elves that are a blend? My biggest thing is that whatever they do is that they don't violate what's established by Tolkien, and that they actually put the thought into actually connecting it and making an organic reality within the established things of the Legendarium, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's what matters to me most. I've read some really touching things. Some people have left some comments on our YouTube videos. One guy, I want to read this comment, and I was kind of moved by this comment.
I'm gonna read a couple real quick from the chat while you're finding that. Chris J says, if there are spans of thousands of years and people migrating to different lands, that's enough time for Homo sapiens to have different physical features and skin tones.
Absolutely.
That's true. I think it's absolutely true. And Red Hawk says Easterlings and Southerners were supposed to be dark, I believe. And then John R says the Harfoots were darker skin tones as well. And Ty says Red Hawk. I also remember Easterlings described more in depth as well. So I mean, yeah. I mean, those are all good, valid points for sure.
Yeah, and so this is a comment that I'm going to read from it was a comment in response to my video, our video on the Rings of Power teaser. This is from an individual named Grim Bread. This person says, I was listening to your podcast episode and came here to leave a comment and and all that. I also want to say that I'm really excited to see brown elves and dwarves in a Lord of the Rings product. The Lord of the Rings movies are a huge favorite, and I've always wanted to get into other products, but have been very weary because I've heard horror stories from POC. I believe that's a person of color nerds who have gotten deep into the fan base. I don't think the fans are bad or anything like that. I just didn't want to fall in love and then feel like an outsider because me being an elf or dwarf isn't acceptable because it's not lore accurate. It's nice to see someone like me doing Tolkien elf stuff. I do think the dwarf should have a beard, though. I've seen people saying she does have like a shaggy one below the chin, but honestly, we'll just have to wait and see. Hope my comment wasn't too confusing and long. So I was moved by especially by the first part of that, because you know, I hate to think that somebody would feel excluded. I do. It's a complex comment because I'm like, you know, I do care that it's lore accurate, but I don't think that having brown skinned or, you know, like elves in there or dwarves in there is lore inaccurate. And that makes that, so I'm cool with it, right?
Yeah.
And until I kind of, you know, somebody proves it to me otherwise, like I'm cool with it.
Yeah.
And I don't see why that can't be acceptable. My biggest thing is I just hope they do a good job of explaining it from the point of view of the legendarium, that it's not a clunky thing where you're just like, yeah, you guys did it, like you guys didn't really think this through very well. But I can see other possibilities. I can see the idea. I was wondering if this guy is like, maybe it's like, you know, an elf and like a southern, like a, you know, a person from the southern, man from the southern regions, right? Who we know are darker skinned. Like maybe they had a romance and had a child as a result, and that this particular elf is a child. And I think we've learned more about that particular elf at this point, that maybe they're a pure elf instead of a half elf. But anyway,
yeah, JDR says, I don't mind a diverse cast for elves as long as their characters are not a caricature of the real character. Yeah,
that's a good way of saying it.
That's a really good way of saying it.
Yeah.
Yep. Micah says, agreed. If the character is written well and played well, it don't matter what they look like unless it's opposite of what was originally written. Well, yeah, if it's clear, you know, clearly contrary to what Tolkien would have wanted.
And so much of the people I see that are arguing for the perspective of I really like either of those two extremes I explained before, are people that I'm just like, you read a little bit of what they're saying and you're like, you think you know Tolkien, but you really haven't spent a lot of time with them. You just have a very surface level, or you've heard things, and those have become the things that you hang your hat on when it comes to arguing for like your ideological perspective, right? And that is just like, to me, like Tolkien, like that is one of the things I love about Tolkien, is like the guys seem to be ideology proof, right? His only ideology, like honestly, and to me, I was thinking about this, I think the only ideology for Tolkien was the ideology of Christ, right?
Yeah.
I think that was the only ideology that mattered to him in the end.
And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. John R says, I imagine that Tolkien wrote these stories for all peoples, not just for peoples who looked a certain way. These elves and dwarves will open the door for new fans who have maybe felt excluded in the past.
Yeah.
Good
point.
Yeah.
Good stuff. And man, we're already we're already 40 minutes into this thing, and I barely even hit on a lot of the correspondence that I wanted to get to. I'm having fun though, you guys. I hope you guys are too. You know, so glad to have so many of you here.
Yep.
Let's hit
John. John says, "In Christ is for all people."
Absolutely.
Amen. Yes.
Absolutely. All right, so let's hit some. I wanted to read this back on timeline compression real quick, and then I'll jump into some of our Silmarillion correspondence. So Jennifer, one of our longtime correspondents, left a comment that I thought was really interesting, and I liked what she had to say. She said, there is a way that the showrunners could cover the whole 3,000 years of the Second Age, just have each season follow a different part of that age. Season 1 could follow the events and characters at the beginning of the Second Age, and the final season could be about the final years leading up to the Third Age. I was also thinking that it would be really cool to do it as a docudrama with actors and narration. But even in a live action series, they can and should use narration, whether it's a voiceover or on screen or a combination of both. But this series should really be done in a more old-fashioned way, with a storyteller, actors, on-screen narration, maybe some animation and illustrations, and no CGI, or very little CGI. So I liked what she said first, but I don't think it's even realistic to think about having it. I think it's super idealistic to think about them doing the like kind of docudrama fashion. But I do love the idea, and I think they could have done it in a sense of like Galadriel and Elrond are like characters that carry all the way through it because they're elves, but then you have different human characters in the different ages of the story, like in each different season. And I feel like other shows do this all the time, right?
Yeah, they had options.
Yeah,
they really did.
So yeah, well, I won't belabor that point too much, but I liked Jennifer's note, and you know, they one of the showrunners made a point to, you know, kind of mock people who wanted like a documentary. I'm like, it doesn't have to be a documentary. It's just you could have been more faithful to the storytelling.
Yep. Also,
Um,
hello to Nag141984. Hello, welcome.
Hello. All right.
And Mike asked a question,
Mhm.
maybe a little intermission, if you will. He says, I'm fairly new to the channel and wanted to know what both of your intros into the Legendarium were.
Yeah.
Good question.
Great question. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to?
I think you go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I read one summer when I was like in middle school, I think. My dad was probably like, "Man, this kid's playing too much Nintendo all summer. I'm going to make him read a book and then write a book report." And so he assigned me to read The Hobbit. I think I enjoyed it, but I don't think I was super into it at that time. I was real into. I was more a sci-fi guy when I was a kid, so I liked Star Wars and Star Trek and that kind of thing, right? And I still do love those things, but I'm much more of a Tolkien guy now. Anyway, that was my first intro, and then years later, it was finally seeing Fellowship of the Ring in the theaters. I was like, I want to go to there, and then I read the entire Lord of the Rings before the Two Towers movie came out, and the rest is history, I guess you say. It's been a long, slow journey ever since then. Tolkien changed my life, right? That's all I can, from that point on, as I got to know Tolkien better, I was just like, there's something about this guy that I don't find anywhere else. And he speaks to the depths of my soul. And I just want to know his mind. So,
yeah. I think my introduction to the Legendarium was basically this guy right here. I don't think I had even I hadn't read anything until you and I met, I think, and maybe we're married. And you were like, "You haven't read this? What? What's wrong with you?"
did we not go see? I thought we went to see Fellowship in the theater together. Did we not?
Well, yeah, but you're the one that took me to the movie.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I guess
that was
I guess
so
that
that came out in December of 2001, and then we got married in August of 2002.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's true. So the
yeah.
movies / John were my introduction. And I really, I enjoy him very much, and I've come to really appreciate his writings.
I thought you were talking about me enjoying.
Well, that
enjoying me very
too.
much.
Yeah, both of you. But I the podcast has really been quite a journey for me, because my joke is that John asked me to be his co-host because I'd make him look smart. Because I really didn't know much about Tolkien, like, at all, starting out. And so all of this, it's been a real journey for me, and I've learned a ton along the way. Yeah. Well, it sounds like a lot of people feel the same way about Tolkien on this chat. So that is fantastic. And thank you, Nag. Can I just call you Nag? Because I'm afraid I'm going to mix up your numbers. We love that you love us and that you love the podcast, and we're glad that you're here. Thank you.
Right on.
Yes. Micah says the movies changed his life, and subsequently the entire writings. So yeah, I think the movies were a huge, they got a lot of people into the Legendarium for sure. That's another reason that I want, that would be really great if they did this show well, because I could bring that many more people to the table.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Word.
Yeah.
Word.
Thanks for asking, Micah.
All right. And we need to do better to make sure we're keeping up with any questions people ask, because we want to.
That was the first question, to be completely honest.
Well, I love all the chat. I just love all the chat that's going on.
I know.
I wish we could be in like an actual location with all these people and like actually hanging out. But Livestream's next best thing. Really enjoying all the chat. So
yeah, it's good, and I'm trying really hard to like follow the chat, but also stay engaged in our conversation. And I'm realizing I'm not a great multitasker, but
no, you're good. You're good. There's only like the second or third time we've live streamed, so we're getting our bearings on it.
We're finding our what's it called? Our groove. We're finding our groove. Oh, that's nice. John R. says Greta has been a wonderful stand-in for every fan that is on their own journey through Tolkien stories. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah.
All right. So let's hit some correspondence from our Silmarillion discussion, and we can, y'all got questions, topics. We'll continue to keep an eye on the chat. First note is from Marilyn the librarian. So this is a note on Ainulindale. Marilyn says, hello, Carswells. What a rich episode. Of course, given the subject matter, that's not surprising. There's so much to talk about. You asked a deep question. What is it about Melkor? One answer may be found in a common theme of medieval Christian literature, the danger of isolation. Unless you are under the guidance of the church, anchoresses, hermits, etc., to be alone is to be suspect. You are apart from the community, and so possibly a threat. The Green Knight lived alone in the wilderness, and Gawain had to go out from the safety of the Round Table community to find him and achieve his quest. Thieves and those who were outside a kin or service to a lord lived in the forests and preyed on travelers. Melkor's isolation in the void was what allowed him to develop thoughts of his own which were out of harmony with his community. Also, I believe Melkor is fire in the ancient quartet of the four elements: earth, air, fire, and water. This would account for his attraction to the flame imperishable, in addition to his desire to make things of his own, which was outside his abilities. That's a great point, one I hadn't thought of. This is another danger for creators, not accepting one's limitations. Melkor wanted more than just his own allotment of the flame, which I see as the divine spark in all things. So greed is another of his flaws. Fire is the most ambiguously presented of all the four elements in Tolkien's Legendarium. Gandalf can wield it, but only because he is the servant of the secret fire. Again, he has the protection of being under the rule of the authorities. Melkor wanted to be the master of the secret fire. In other words, he wanted to be Eru, but that job was already taken, so to speak. Man, that's like just right there. That paragraph was amazing. That paragraph is so insightful.
What are they again? They're knowledge balloons.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if in the summer they're water balloons.
I mean,
yeah.
Just good stuff. She goes on. I think Tolkien thought of the Ainur more as older sibs than his parents. In letter 212, he writes, elves and humans were children as being weaker and more ignorant than the Valar, but of equal lineage, my emphasis, her emphasis, deriving being direct from the one, even though under the Valar's authority as rulers of Arda. This sounds more like equals with different abilities to me than beings on different rungs of the hierarchy. But YMMV, what does that mean? I know what that means. Hold on.
YMMV. I have no idea.
Your mileage may vary. There we go. Your mileage may vary. I'm sure by now someone else has already noted that the phrase Greta was seeking was Paul's line, now we see through a glass darkly. And then she goes on, why was Melkor, who was most assuredly a Vala, one of the Valar, free to go to Arda, even if he hadn't received leave from Eru? And I'm not sure that this is in fact the case, because we get free will, choice, and if you aren't free to say no, then you are not truly free to say yes. That we often pay a terrible price for this freedom and the freedom of others is certainly beyond doubt in my mind. But somehow the beloved felt it was worth the price, and that is where I put my trust, when I'm centered. That's great. And beloved, capitalized B there. So it's so important to remember that for Tolkien, evil was not an entity with its own existence. Evil was no more and no less than an absence of good, not a presence of something other than good. Darkness is not its own thing, with the possible exception of the unlight of Ungoliant, but that is clearly sui generis in a class by itself. Darkness is an absence of light, and light does not require darkness in order for it to exist. This is spelled out in Boethius, someone Tolkien read in Latin and Anglo-Saxon, if memory serves me. The idea that dark and light, and even more evil and good, are somehow equal in being and even dependent on each other to exist is more of a Manichaean or even Zoroastrian view, highly dualistic and not in keeping with the Christian idea that all that God created was good. It's certainly true that Tolkien has been described as Manichaean in his approach, because his tales seemed so based in the struggle of good versus evil, of overpowering or overcoming. But I think this overlooks the crucial fact of Lord of the Rings that the ultimate defeat of the evil of Sauron, not of all evil, note, was not through conquering or overcoming, not through power over, but through yielding up power, through destruction of the embodiment of domination by refusing to use it, but instead unmaking it. Remember the notion from John Stuart Mill about the only thing needed for evil to exist was for good folks to look on and do nothing? Of course, in the end, Frodo's will was unable to accomplish this on its own. was unable to accomplish this on its own. But he had done his utmost to make it so, and then Grace stepped in to ensure that what Frodo and Sam had made possible actually happened. At the same time, there were lots of traditional battles and armies fighting and such, but the ultimate victory was Frodo and Sam's, not Aragorn's. And even Aragorn's actions were not about dominating. He knew he couldn't win at the gates of Mordor, but about distracting, to allow the other form of success to occur. So that was Marilyn's amazing letter. There's so much good stuff in there.
So good. Yeah.
I love the thoughts about Melkor representing fire. So you've got earth, wind, water, and fire, right? It's those kind of four four ancient elements of creation, right? And you've got Aule is earth, Manwe is wind, Ulmo is water. So yeah, it makes sense. Melkor is fire, right?
Yep.
And yeah, John R is like, I need to lay down for 45 minutes after this course. Like, that's it's really pretty amazing stuff that she sends us, and this is one of her best yet.
I thought we could do like a whole episode.
Yeah.
On just that, just talking about what she says. And
well, I love the thing about, I'm sorry, let me just say this real quick about that. I love that she, like, I had not made that connection. Melkor wants the fire. Gandalf is the servant of the secret fire, right? He's the servant of the secret fire, and therefore he can wield it, right? But Melkor wants to possess the secret fire, right? He wants, what does she say exactly? He wanted more than just his own allotment of the flame. Melkor wanted to be the master of the secret fire. So, yeah.
Ty Miller, another super chat. He says, in honor of balloons, not bombs, I give this tip.
Nice. Thanks, Ty.
That's awesome.
Thanks,
That's
Ty.
awesome. Jonathan R. also said that he's like, imagine if all the people upset with the show right now would just listen to Marilyn.
Yeah, I mean, and this is, man, I just love the notes we get from her and from all you guys. Like, I'm like, man, Tolkien is just not where you go if you want to just have these kind of like surface level arguments about things, right? Tolkien is where you go if you want to like really dig deep into reality, to contemplate more deeply the reality of the world, of existence.
Right.
And I think there is truth at stake. I think there are those things, but the other thing I want to mention about her letter that really moves me, and this is a thought I've been having a lot lately. You've got this juxtaposition between Gondor, Aragorn, and what they do in fighting the War of the Ring. And then you've got Frodo and Sam and what they're doing. You can never ultimately defeat evil through physical warfare. All physical warfare is actually good for is restraining evil. Restraining, not defeating it. You can't ultimately defeat evil, right, through physical warfare. You can only restrain it. And I was in the Navy. I'm not a pacifist. I'm saying it's just like, that's not like, you can't defeat evil with like ultimately with physical warfare. Evil is only defeated through spiritual warfare. So I love this thing in the Lord of the Rings where they're defending, right? They're doing what they can, but they know that the most important battle is being waged by Frodo and Sam, right? And taking that ring in self-sacrifice all the way to Mordor and laying down the most powerful thing in the world, right? I mean,
yeah,
this is what I'm here for, everybody. This is why, I just keep on churning in doing this, because it's just like, that is just such incredible insight right there. And Tolkien doesn't even say it explicitly. He just tells an awesome story, and it's drawn out right there because he was just being who he was, right?
Yeah.
So good.
So good. Quick thing. Josh Sosa asked about, is our Tolkien Road email, is that the best way the best way for him to get in touch with us? Is that, I don't even know.
TolkienRoadPodcast@gmail.com.
Tolkien Road Podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Also, what was there something else here? Oh, JDR said a Gandalf quote from Lord of the Rings. Oh wait, no, sorry. Pull back. Chris J says, isn't the secret fire the Holy Spirit, from a Tolkien letter? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody wants to look that up. I think there's, I don't know that it's ever explicitly stated. I could be wrong. I feel like that's where a lot of people land, right? Like, is that's what that refers to.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let me do a quick search in the letters of J.R.R. Tolkien here.
While you're doing that, JDR has a Gandalf quote here. He says, I am a servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flame of Anor. Did I say that right? Anor? You cannot pass. The dark fire will not avail you. Flame of Udun. Go back to the shadow.
Yeah, Gandalf's quote to the Balrog.
Yes. Okay. And then John R says, maybe Let me see. He says, help came from the hands of the weak when the wise faltered. It was the Perianath, the little people, dwellers in hillsides and meadows that brought them deliverance. Yeah.
Right on.
Sorry, I need to go back and reread Marilyn's letter because I feel like I missed a lot because I was trying to follow the chat. Like, I can't keep up, guys.
I can forward it to you.
And I'm going to blame my eyes. I had my pupils dilated today. So I'm like, so doing my best.
Had a little eye exam today.
If I miss something good, I apologize and just retype it and I'll get it maybe at some point. Yeah, but Marilyn is truly brilliant. As Jonathan R says.
Always sending good stuff along.
Oh, good. Yep.
So next I want to hit this note from, let's see here. This is from
I'm sorry, were you searching something? You were about the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, I only found 2 references to Holy Spirit in the letters of Tolkien, and neither one seems to speak directly to that question.
To the secret fire.
So again, there may be a reference and I'm just not finding it.
Yeah.
Perishable flame.
Oh, I think Nag repeated what she said, or he. Oh, I don't know. Sorry. They said, love you guys in your podcast.
Right on.
Thanks.
Thank you.
She wanted to make sure maybe that I read it word for word. So thank you, Nag. I appreciate that.
Let's see here. So next up on the correspondence comes a note from Tom McArdle in response to our recent Einelindale episode as well. He says, I really enjoyed this one. Sorry for being late to the picnic. As far as the problem of evil goes, I have no answer, but have found a satisfying landing place. When I don't or can't know why God has done something, I can trust his character. I think that's pretty similar actually to what Marilyn said in her note, where, it's like kind of like falling back on the knowledge of the beloved. I think that's what she meant. This is the God who gave his own son to suffer and die for my sins, who raised him from the dead and gave me forgiveness and eternal life through him. So I can take what I do know about God and trust him for what I don't know. This, in a sense, is the undoing of the temptation of Satan in the garden. Satan called into question whether God really had Adam and Eve's best interests in mind. In other words, could God be trusted? That, to me, is the question in front of us when we consider the problem of evil. God showed in the death and resurrection of Christ that at great cost to himself, he did have our best in mind, and in his heart for us, for our good. John, you made a great point of how hard it is to think about and accept these things while enduring great suffering. That is true. We want to be gentle with folks in that place. But Jesus and God, the Father, know suffering also. Jesus has suffered and is able to sympathize with us. And who knows what suffering God the Father endured when, as Christ was on the cross, his relationship with his Son was severed. Granted, there's much mystery here. My point is that although God is transcendent, he is intimately familiar with our suffering and has displayed great compassion, gentleness, and mercy to those who have suffered, even when they have expressed frustration and anger with him. I guess I am saying that I don't need to know why because I know who. And this all, remember, comes in the context of our wrestling with the questions of Einelindale, right? This creation story, why God allowed, why Eru Iluvatar, aka God, allowed for the for Melkor to kind of do his thing and cause all these problems, right? So it's it is maybe the deepest question of all, right? Maybe the deepest question of all.
Yep.
So,
and Josh, you are most welcome. Glad to have you back. Hit us up at our email that John said.
Right.
I don't know it. And Micah has another question. He says about chapter 3. So it seems to me that before the elves were awoken, there were dark creatures in Middle Earth under Morgoth. Am I off? I don't remember the exact paragraph you all pointed out, but what was here before the elves in Middle Earth? So, yeah, because Eru allowed Melkor to enter in to Middle Earth. Yeah, there would have been. Wouldn't there have been?
Well, totally, there was. Yeah. In fact, that's called out in chapter 3 of the Silmarillion.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's what he was saying. We talked about that on that episode.
Yeah. There are for sure creatures, dark creatures that Melkor does create. Now, what we mean by create, I think more like he's kind of like, what exactly is he doing in the process of creating? He's not creating like an original creature.
No,
in the
he
sense
can only
of,
manipulate.
But we.
And corrupt.
With the coming of the elves, we get the orcs because he corrupts, he captures orcs and then kind of twists them.
Yeah, there's Balrogs, as Red Hawk pointed
By the
out.
way,
Yep.
here's something that's been on my mind. I don't know what you guys think of this, but I would love if we get to see in the process of telling this story. I would love to, and Rings of Power is what I'm referring to. I would love to see them wrestle more deeply with the nature of the orcs, right? And to the point of asking the question, is it possible if at least the original elves or the original orcs were corrupted elves, is it possible for an orc to be redeemed, right? And not necessarily like kind of the religious sense of the word, but to be turned away from orcish ways back to ways of good, right? Despite everything they've all the ways in which they've been corrupted.
Are orcs redeemable? Is
Yeah.
that what you were asking?
Yeah.
That's a very good question.
Yeah, and I think that's a really fascinating way they could go. Now, maybe that's too deep. And of course, Tolkien never really seemed, not that I know of, at least, never really seemed to wrestle with that. But that is a question that I feel I could make a good case that he would have found that an interesting question if he had more time to wrestle with it. I just think after he wrote Lord of the Rings, he spent the rest of his life like just asking these super deep questions about, like, we see that in the nature of Middle Earth. We see that in a lot of the writings that are in the later History of Middle Earth series. Man, he was just wrestling with all of these super deep questions. And so the logic is that if the elves are corrupted orcs, then why couldn't they be turned back from their orcish ways to their elvish ways, right?
It's a great question.
Maybe they'll never look like an elf again, right? But could they? I think that's a fascinating question to ask. So
yeah. Ty says, yes, John, you literally just touched on a thought I had for a fantasy film concept when I wanted to go into filmmaking. Oh, about the redeemable orcs, I guess. So JDR says Balrogs were Ainur/Maiar. I guess I knew that.
Yeah, that's from Valaquenta.
That is from Valaquenta.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then Micah asks, would it make sense that Ungoliant was here? Because I don't ever remember reading where she came from. So could she have been there, like, before the elves awoke?
So Ungoliant, I feel like she must have been an Ainur of some kind, right? I don't know that there's actually an explicit place that's stated, but I feel like I read that somewhere sometime long ago. And I think there's, we haven't gotten to that chapter yet where she's introduced in the Silmarillion on this current read, but I'm sure we'll be talking about that when we get there.
Okay.
What are some possible theories for where she came from?
So Kurt has an interesting question. He says, do orc souls, which are elven souls, go to the halls of Mandos after death? What about dwarves? I've never heard what happens to them when they die.
So as far as dwarves go, I think in chapter 2 of Ale and Yavanna, there's this, they allude to the idea that orcs have their own, or I'm sorry, dwarves have their own kind of theory about where they go. Like they have their own like religion about like, or kind of like eschatological perspective on what happens to them. I don't think they go to the halls of Mandos. I don't recall that being written anywhere.
Ty says, I believe it is touched on that upon their corruption, that right was taken from them.
Of going to the halls of
Mandos. Yeah. And as far as Ungoliant goes, it says Ungoliant's origins, or John says, he has a quote, Ungoliant's origins are shrouded in mystery. It is thought that she may have been one of the Maiar or a lesser spirit whom Melkor corrupted long ago, but she is not listed among the known Ainur. Okay. Yeah. Interesting. All really good stuff. Going back real quick to talking about the fire. Here, John R. Had a quote. It says, Tolkien also uses another name for the secret fire, that is, the fire imperishable, to express his eternal nature. He existed from the very beginning, even before the universe was made, and he is permanent, as well as the Holy Spirit is. Also, the lamp, always turned on, that has to represent the flame of the Holy Spirit in the church, is familiarly called the eternal flame. or everlasting light.
Well, if this were an older episode of the podcast, I would start playing "Eternal Flame" by the Bangles right now.
I can sing it.
But I'm afraid of getting demonetized if I do, because we don't have the rights to use that song. Hey, careful! We might get demonetized.
Uh-oh. Really?
I think it actually has to be a recording.
I didn't use the right words.
But
I don't know the actual words.
They're pretty strict about it. So
yeah. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. There were a bunch of old episodes where they're like, can't monetize this one, and it's like, why not? It's because we play. Literally, y'all. I played one of my own songs in there one time, which I have on iTunes, and then they demonetized that video. They're like, you can't play this song in there. I'm like, I wrote that song. That's my song.
Good job keeping it PG.
So I created some kind of loop that loops myself out of having permission to use my own music on YouTube.
Unbelievable. Well, if they try to give you a hard time, just say I didn't use the right words at all, because I don't know them. I was just humming. Yes. John R says about dwarves, for they say that Aule the Maker, whom they call Mahal, cares for them and gathers them to Mandos and halls set apart. So yeah, I remember talking about that. So yeah, that's where the dwarves go when they die. And in the end, the dwarves will help him in the remaking of the world. Yep.
That's right. Yep. Yeah. They think they have another, kind of a separate region in the halls of Mandos.
Right.
So
yeah.
All right. So let's see. Where was I? Oh, all right. Let's get back to some correspondence here. David G on January 15th. And this is for Valaquinta.
Oh, real quick.
Yeah.
John R says, check out letter 150. Oh, he just retracted it.
Uh-oh.
Oops. Okay.
All right.
Strike that from the record.
Tolkien's thoughts on redemption of orcs. Ooh, it's in there? Okay. Well,
that's what I was trying to read, and then he redacted it.
Well, yeah, well.
And Ty says he's pulling it up right now. Oh, typo. Okay. That's okay. That's why he redacted it, because of a typo. Micah says, I love the fact that elves think they return to the earth and stone. Ha ha ha.
Let's see here. 153. All right. How do I get there?
I don't know.
His letters are not easy to parse in my Kindle app on my desktop here. So I just got to page forward a bunch. All right. 153.
Coming at you. I'm seeing if I'm trying to look at. Can I scroll through the chat?
I think so. Yeah.
Can I go back up? I was wondering. I'm trying to see if
don't close out the live stream.
John R says they would be Morgoth's greatest sins, abuses of his highest privilege. It would be creatures begotten of sin and naturally bad.
Let's see. All right, here we go. This
because
this is a letter we need to do sometime.
Or tolerating their making necessary to their actual existence. Even orcs would become part of the world, which is God's and ultimately good. But whether they could have souls or spirits seems a different question. And since in my myth, at any rate, I do not conceive of the making of souls or spirits.
So I think I'm there. This is letter 153 is to Peter Hastings, who was he was the owner of the Newman Bookshop in Oxford. And pretty long. I don't see here we go. The shadow that bred them can only mock. It cannot make real things of its own. I don't think it gave life to the orcs. It only ruined them and twisted them. Yeah, this is just one of those letters that we need to go through in depth. Can anybody find? So what were you reading there?
Well, he started quoting here where he says they would be Morgoth's greatest sins, abuses of his highest privilege. And would be creatures begotten of sin and naturally bad. I nearly wrote irredeemably bad, but that would be going too far. So I don't know. I guess the quote goes on. Because
there we go.
Because by accepting or tolerating their making necessary to their actual existence, even orcs would become part of the world, which is God's and ultimately good. But whether they could have souls or spirits seems a different question. And since in my myth, at any rate, I do not conceive of the making of souls or spirits, things of an equal order, if not an equal power to the Valar, as a possible delegation. I have represented at least the orcs as pre-existing real beings on whom the Dark Lord has exerted the fullness of his power in remodeling and corrupting them, not making them.
Yeah, it's interesting because
yes, top shelf work, John. Thank you.
Definitely. And I feel like this is something like maybe we just need to do an episode on this question. Like,
yeah.
Because I need to spend some time with what he says there, because it's written in a little bit of that Tolkienese that's kind of like, what's he saying there?
I know. I was like stumbling over the words.
Right?
Like, where does the sentence end?
Okay. He's saying something really deep and saying it in a very roundabout, Oxford Don kind of way. So I feel like I'd want to spend some more time with that. And I feel like in the Silmarillion, we see that they are corrupted elves, and it's just like, what is it that would make them finally it seems to me that he's saying that they're actually not irredeemable,
because he says that would be going too far.
Yeah, that would be going too far. So I think I'm going to go with that for right now, and I'm going to say that, going back to my original thing, I think it'd be really cool if the Rings of Power explored that idea, right, of having an orc that actually is turns away, right, from being orcish.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. Jonathan Rice says, I need the lifespan of an elf to talk about all these things in proper detail.
I know the feeling there. Yeah.
Interesting. So John Richard says, of course, that one, I guess he means that letter, has the notation that Tolkien has written, not sent, and has added, it seemed to be taking myself too importantly.
Yeah.
That's a very Tolkienian thing to do. Don't send a letter because you took yourself too importantly. But
then Christopher, approved its publication. So and to me, it's like if Christopher was okay with it being published, it may not have the same level of authority as like something Tolkien himself published. But it's still Christopher. And I say this because assuming that no one knew the mind of his father when it came to Middle Earth better than Christopher did. And so if Christopher was okay with it being in there, then it's like, then there's something to that. There's something interesting in that.
Definitely. Yeah. Red Hawk says the Good Orc would be a good title for an episode.
Yeah. Well,
the Good Orc. Yeah. I think that's good. Yeah.
All right. Well, so Greta, how much more time are you giving us?
Oh, you're putting it on me? Rude.
Y'all, she does.
How much more time do you guys want? I don't have the lifespan of an elf.
I'm going to tell you guys right now, I got a lot more correspondence, but here's the thing. Greta actually is supposed to work tomorrow, a very long 12-hour shift, and she's doing God's work. So I don't want to, she is like, this is a lot of fun. And so she's like, oh, I don't want to go away. But at the same time, it's like, we got to probably cut it off. And what do you think? We
Micah just challenged us to go all night. Wouldn't that be fun? Like, just do an all-nighter in the chat.
You start hitting us with some big super chats. We'll think about it. I'm just saying.
Right. We'll need a lot of caffeine to do this.
That's right. We just need the super chats to pay for all the caffeine that we need.
Ty just asked, how big of a tip will it take for another hour? My time is priceless, Ty. It's
she's a nurse, and so I just want to make sure she gets a good night's sleep and plenty of rest.
Yeah,
so she can do a good job taking care of people.
What time is it? It's only 8:14.
Yeah,
we can at least go till 8:30. I think
let's plan on 8:30, right?
Yeah. I think that's good. I'm glad you guys want to keep hanging out with us, though.
Yeah.
That makes me happy.
You guys are making us feel so cool right now.
I know, you really are. Awesome. I know. We should do this more often.
All right. So next piece of correspondence comes from David G on January 15th in response to the Valaquenta episode. David says, thank you so much for this series. I'm reading the Silmarillion right now, and this podcast is a great companion. I made an attempt to read it translated to my native language when I was maybe 12 years old, and the movies were quite new, but I gave up during this first chapter. This time I'm reading the original and thought it is a bit hard to follow. I feel like I will finish it this time. Keep up the good work. So awesome. Glad to hear you're trying it. And, amazing. Whenever I hear somebody that's reading in a language that's not their first language, I'm like, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it was a struggle for me in English, which is my native language. So yeah, that's awesome.
Mhm.
Oh, shout out to fellow nurse, Chris J. Awesome.
Right on.
Yep. They feel me. And thank you. John R. says, may Este watch over you tonight and tomorrow. Rest is her gift. Awesome. Yeah, that's so good. Ty says the healing hands need to be well rested. Otherwise, Faramir might have died. True.
Mm-hmm.
So true. That would have been a sad day. That is so true. Yeah, Micah says, keep it up, David G. Tried to read 3 times before I read it fully last year. I think that's a lot of people's experience.
Yeah, it took me to the 3rd time before I read Silmarillion all the way through.
Yep, 3rd time's
Had a couple of false starts for sure.
Yeah.
Little quick haiku from Samuel P. from January 19th. First one. In the beginning, Eru, called a Luvatar, made a great music.
Yeah.
And do the next one?
Sure. Valar rule Ea. Prepare for Eru's children. Make the world better. Make the world better.
And then another one. Melkor wants Ea. Despises Eru's children. Lusts for Arda.
Those all go together. That's really good.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Nice. And he says, and also, and did you know that when Tolkien lists all the male and then female Valar, they form haiku? Manwe, Olmo, Aule, Orome, Mondos, Lorien, and Tulkas. That's one haiku. And Varda, Yavanna, Niena, Este, Vaire, Vana, and Nessa. Haiku number 2. So amazing.
That's awesome.
I think we did one back in the day. The titles of the 3 Lord of the Rings books, volumes, form a haiku. Oh wait, was that it? Maybe that's not right. Fellowship.
Wait, Fellowship of the Rings.
Fellowship of the Ring.
Yeah.
The 2 Towers. The Return of the King. Yeah, they do, right? So they form a haiku.
Is it it's the 2 Towers? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool.
All right.
Oh, we got a Brazilian on here.
Good stuff.
Welcome,
Samuel.
Paulo.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome, Paulo.
That is awesome. Chuck F says this has been great. Thanks for doing this again. Good night, all. Good night, Chuck.
Good night, Chuck.
Thank you for joining us.
All right. Next up is from Werty, one of our patrons, but this is over on YouTube.
Werty.
There we go. Sam and Frodo both reference Varda numerous times on their trot through Mordor. When fighting Shelob, Sam says it to kindle the star glass in his hand. Vial or feel, yeah. Remember that whole thing?
Yes, I do.
Also, when they are passing through the gate with the vulture-headed sentinels, that is the password that breaks the vigilance long enough. I find it interesting that the closer they get to the Darklands, farthest from the Blessed Realm, the more in touch they become with the Blessed Realm, almost as though they are being directly bolstered by the gods to persevere. Yeah, I love that insight that the further away, the closer they get to Mordor, the more spiritually in touch they seem to be with the Blessed Realm, right? With the beings of the Blessed Realm, the good beings of the Blessed Realm.
Yeah.
Powerful insight there.
Really, for sure.
Powerful insight.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, as the darkness grows, right, you need every source of light you can get, and the Blessed Realm is light. Like that's what it is. Yeah,
for sure. So next here we have a note from our patron Dura Nair.
I always say his name wrong.
I like saying he was very clear on how his name was said when he first
did.
became a
I remember
patron.
that, and I just keep forgetting.
And I like these, different. like saying the Tolkien words and saying words in the way that I found I enjoy the music of words quite a bit. So, Duran says he noted some confusion on the differences of Valinor and Aman.
Yes, that was my confusion.
Yeah,
because I have no sense of direction or geography.
And I think I got it all straight, but
I think you did.
Aman, and he says Valinor is the country, the land of the Valar behind the Pelori Mountains. Aman is the entire Western continent, just as Middle Earth, Endor, same name as the moon in Star Wars, but not it, is the central continent. So yeah, Aman is the whole continent on to the west, and then Valinor is like the country of the Valar that's behind the Pelori there, and then Valmar is like the city within Valinor. So
yeah. Okay,
hopefully,
so Aman would be like
helps.
Europe, and Valinor would be like Spain.
Yeah,
and Aman would be like Barcelona.
No, so Aman would be like the continent, right?
Okay, I said Europe. That's what I said.
And then Valinor would be Spain.
Yeah.
And then Valmar would be Barcelona.
That's what I said.
You just wanted to say Barcelona, though.
I did want to say Barcelona.
Yeah, you just wanted
because I just learned the correct way to pronounce it the other day.
Because we went to a place called
Barcelona.
Yes.
Wine.
And I think what I've learned since is that a lot of places in maybe it's just that particular region of Spain, but that's how they pronounce their C's in their words.
But that is what I said. So I think you repeated it because you just wanted to say Barcelona.
Okay, sorry. I may have misunderstood you.
Who needs to go to bed here, guys? I think it's this guy.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll just let you keep going.
Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but thank you for clarifying. D. Can I call you D? Let's call you D.
Duran I'll just say it for you.
Thank you. I used to be able to say it. I don't know what happened.
Next up is from Andrew T. on February 16th. Let's see here. Oh, not that one. There it is. Andrew says, I hope y'all are doing well. I've been a bit busy lately, so I've only just been able to start listening to the Silmarillion episodes. And doing so, I've had some thoughts about some things. My first thought has to do with the discussion of light and dark. I think it can be shown that light has substance and darkness is nothing in all the forms that we can talk about and think about light and darkness. For instance, physically, light is actually photons that are emitted from the nuclear fission that takes place in the sun. And in contrast, darkness is literally just nothing. So here, light is actually a thing that allows us to see everything, and actually we see certain aspects of that physical thing in the colors that we can see. Darkness, on the other hand, like the black or void parts of space, for example, is not made up of anything, but is instead simply the absence of the physical particles that make up light. With the physical example of light, we can see that light is not the absence of darkness, but instead darkness is the absence of light, because light is a real thing and darkness is not made up of anything except emptiness. This fits right in with Tolkien's and the Christian worldview of light and darkness, where good light is the real or original thing, and evil darkness is the absence of the good light and a degradation of it. I also just had the same thought when listening to y'all discussing Tolkien and Tom Bombadil, that there might be some more evidence for the theory that they are the same being. If I remember correctly, Tom saves the hobbits from the Barrow-wights by singing a song that casts it into the outer darkness, or void, I can't remember exactly. And Tolkien is also the one that defeated Melkor the first time and cast him into the outer darkness. This seems to me to be a striking resemblance in ability, because I don't think it is mentioned elsewhere that any other character does this kind of thing just by their own power. Of course, the fact that it is not mentioned that anyone else does this does not mean that no one else is capable of doing it as well. So there is the possibility that others can, but I do find it interesting that as far as I can recall, they are the only two characters to do this with their own power. Lastly, I just wanted to say that so far, the Silmarillion Rethrow is going wonderfully, and to just keep up the great work.
Oh,
so
nice.
Thank you.
All great thoughts, yeah.
Good. Yeah, definitely good thoughts on darkness and light.
That was a really good. I remember that was a really good discussion we had on all that.
Yeah. Well, and Marilyn also brought that up in the letter we read from her earlier. And one thing that it did get me thinking about, and I am by no means a physicist, but I feel like there's, I read a lot of discussion. I do find that stuff very interesting, even though I don't understand it very well. But like some of the more like theoretical quantum physics kind of stuff, dark matter, like that's actually a thing, and is that actually like what is that? I don't even know. I feel like I'm not equipped to really have a good discussion of it, except just to say that apparently it is something that physicists I think have proven exists. I'm just not sure how it falls into this discussion. So anyway,
Going back to our last our last discussion about Valinor and Amon. JDR says, speaking of which, were elves allowed to go to Valinor beyond Tol Eressëa and Eloquent Alquilande? How do you say that?
Aqualande.
Alquilande.
We're elves.
Yeah, Jonathan Rice says, I believe so. The different groups of elves congregated around the Maiar they associated with. The Teleri elves lived on the shores to be closer to Elmo.
Yeah, for sure. So like the Vanyar, they I mean they were very close with with like Monway, and
So they were
I don't know.
allowed. Yeah.
I don't know if they lived in Valmar, but I don't think there was a reason the elves weren't allowed to go. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think there was any reason they couldn't go to Valmar. I don't know if they lived in Valmar. We're gonna get into some of like some more of that as far as like the different places and the realms they established in the Blessed Realm for the elves. But yeah, I don't unless I missed something a detail. I think they were pretty free to roam. It's just they prefer different groups of elves prefer different regions. Now, um, when it comes to like Frodo and members of the Fellowship, well, at least Frodo and Bilbo, when they go to the Blessed Realm at the end of the Third Age, and I don't have a reference for this, but everything I've ever heard is that they don't go beyond Tol Eressëa, right? They that's as far as they go. So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Micah says, excellent thoughts on Tom, as that is a whole other discussion on what he is, especially because the One Ring has no sway over him.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look at Gandalf or Galadriel and their reactions to the ring, it could be used for evil, or it could be used for good while they would want. I'm sorry, it could be used for evil while they would want to do good. So yeah, the ring definitely had an effect on like Gandalf and Galadriel did not have the same power against the ring that Tom did.
Yeah.
And Micah, I don't know if you've listened to it or not, but we've done at least one episode focused on Tom Bombadil. We brought on
Right.
Tom, right? Who's
we had Keith Matheson.
Oh, Keith Matheson. That's right.
On to discuss an article that he wrote, and then more recently we had the author of the book In the House of Tom Bombadil, and his name it's over there on my bookshelf, just out of reach. I will give you his name. Yeah, he wrote it's a really good book, and you should check it out. We did this. It was actually Greta was not on that episode. It was just me with the writer. His name is C.R. Wiley, Chris Wiley. So it was a fantastic discussion. So
both of those. Oh well. Yeah, I'm sure this last one was very good. Again, I wasn't a part of it, but I know the one we did with Keith was very interesting and very fun. So I would recommend listening to those if you want to know more about Tom. Ty Miller says, does Gimli go farther? I guess as far as like, does he go
into the Blessed Realm?
Into the Blessed Realm?
I don't know.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, Jonathan Rice says, I thought that. Oh, sorry, that was in relation to a comment that was retracted. So I don't know what that's about. They're talking about Círdan's ship.
Yeah, I think all we know is that Legolas and Gimli depart together from Middle Earth, and I'm not sure we know much beyond that.
Because Legolas would have been able to go past, right? Because he was an elf.
I feel like Gimli should get to go hang out with Aule.
Yeah, he should.
I feel like that's appropriate.
Why wouldn't he? He's a dwarf.
It's like my people.
I know. Right? Yeah, absolutely.
He's like, hey, I came up with you guys, right? I came up with you people, right? So you come hang with me. But then Gimli was probably like, only if Legolas can come hang with me, right?
Yeah, I know, because they got to be really good friends. Kurt says, I don't believe Tom banished the whites to the void. He just sang his song demanding they leave the tomb empty.
Right.
And then he quotes the song. Come never here again, leave your barrow empty, lost and forgotten be, darker than the darkness, where gates stand forever, forever shut till the world is bended. So yeah, good point, Kurt. Jonathan R says, can you just imagine Alley's pure joy? I'm loving the autocorrect on these chats. Like they clearly don't know Tolkien. How they spelled Owlays. Or maybe Jonathan. Oh, I get it. Because he's a bird guy. I see now. I thought that silly me. I thought that was autocorrect. Owlays pure joy. Yeah.
Well, it's also, it's you got to make the umlaut over the E, right? And it's hard to do that.
It is hard to do that.
I
know.
I learned how to do that because it happens so much in Tolkien, and I want to make sure I'm saying.
Yeah,
right,
and you're a nerd when it comes to that stuff.
Yes.
Ty says Gimli definitely is listed. Gimli definitely is listed as the only dwarf to be given the chance. I got to find that reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Jonathan R says his excitement when creating the dwarves, and then one day getting to meet Gimli, all those thousands and thousands of years later. Yeah, that would be cool. That would be very, very cool.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, we are at the. I think Greta would keep going if I didn't say anything, but I have a responsibility to her, so I think we're gonna call it. I want to keep. Honestly, this is fun, and I want to keep going, and I've got a lot more correspondence. That we could go over, but it is time for us to wrap everything up. So we appreciate y'all.
Mm-hmm. This has been a blast.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do it again next month. And hey, if you don't already subscribe to our channel, please do. If you haven't already liked the video, please do. And hit that notification bell too. So but we appreciate y'all, and we'll talk at you next time.
Hold on real quick.
Oh yeah,
Micah wants a repeat of the email.
Tolkien Road. Here, let me just type it in here.
Yeah, do that. That would be good. Tolkien Road Podcast at gmail.com.
Did I get that right? Did I spell Tolkien right? Tolkien, IEN, Road Podcast at gmail.com.
You did. Yep. Jonathan Rice says, I once described your show as inviting folks into your home for a beer to talk Tolkien, and this live stream is closer than I ever expected we would get to that. Oh, that's awesome. That's
right
very
on.
Cool. Next time we'll bring beers.
Yes.
Or wine or something.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you all joined us. This was really, really great.
Absolutely, you guys.
Yes.
All right. Well, have a great night, everybody, and we will talk at you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.